Well, hey guys, welcome to Quinn's Tree Farm. Coming to you straight through the magic of YouTube from Norridgewock, Maine. Today we are on a field trip. Today we're at the Maine Christmas Tree Association seed orchard, which is kind of like an apple orchard except for Christmas trees. This is where all the seed stock comes for Christmas Tree Association trees. And this is where we got our trees for the ass over tree kettle field. Today we're doing something really cool. I'm here with my friend Ryan Liberty, and we're getting samples for a needle retention study. So we're going to go over that today and see how we can improve our Christmas trees for people who have Christmas trees in their house. After that, we're going to go over to Nutkin Knoll Christmas Tree Farm, where we're going to meet up with Len Price, who is another important member of this needle retention study. And we'll go over and see his field, and he's going to explain what the next step in the process is. So stick around and we'll get to work.
So, and it's 2 years growth on north and south side of the tree, so obviously it'll be harder on these lower ones, but if we look at, say, this one here,
Okay.
this is this year's growth, last year's growth, so we'd cut it back at least 3 years, snip it there. That'll be the sample we send off to Len, and he can partner it up with his progeny that he's growing in his fields. This seed orchard was started decades and decades ago by some of the founding members of Maine Christmas Tree Association. What they recognized early on, if they wanted to have a product that was really their own sort of brand, they needed to try to find the best strain of balsam fir possible. So they hired folks out of the University of Maine at Orono. Those folks would have gone out and looked high and low around the Northeast to find balsam fir that had disease resistancy, drought resistancy, the color we wanted, that grew fast. They planted them in this seed orchard as well as one in Ashland. From there, these what are clones would have grown up, and we have every couple, 3 years, we will harvest the cones that come off the trees, bring them down to seed, dry them out in a controlled environment, and then send them off to our nursery, who would grow them from seed and eventually turn them into seedlings and ship them back to us, where we would, as farmers, buy them, and then we would plant them and grow them for our customers. What we're doing now is we've recognized one of the most important things about balsam fir that customers want is needle retention. You know, they don't want to buy a Christmas tree, have it come home and have the needles start falling off after a week. So some trees, some strains will hold their needles better than others. What we're trying to do is take samples from these trees, send those samples off to the University of Washington State University. They will take these samples in a controlled environment, humidity, temperature, light, whatever, and measure over the period of time. After, I think it's something along the lines of basically hanging these branches up, counting the needles after each and every day, and seeing, you know, which strains are holding their needles better. What we think will happen is that data will tell a story that we've got strains of balsam fir in here that will hold up as well as a Fraser, and maybe in some cases better. I mentioned the Fraser because really the Fraser fir, it's a beautiful tree. It's not native to this area though. It grows really well. The large scale farmers really like it. It has some characteristics they like. If we're trying to identify a tree that is truly of Maine, the balsam fir is it, right? Everybody, when you smell a balsam fir, you think Christmas. It's very aromatic, and it's the tree that you and I grew up with in the woods. We recognize it as sort of that Christmas tree. So this is a map of the seed orchard here in Norridgewock. Row 1, the extreme left-hand side of this paper, would be this first row that we're looking at. Each and every tree is numbered. What we're going to do is take a sample from at least 2 years growth from the north side of the tree as well as the south side of the tree. We'll label it with some marking ribbon, put it in the garbage bag, and then move on to the next tree. Bring it up to Len, we'll ship it all out, and that'll give us really a nice baseline to work with for the folks at Washington State to give us some good data. So this would be a south side exposure.
I was gonna say, you're taller than me, so I'm no help to you there.
Get these, label these with the marking tape. I would just tie it around them together. 1-1 north, 1-1 south. That tree is the number 4. I'll go identify that now.
Okay.
Sure enough, 4.
4, 13. Oh, my bad. 443. South. You remember south for the south branch? If you like what you see, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button. And if you want to know that every time that I post a new video, hit the notification bell. We do all kinds of crazy Christmas tree things. And when we're not doing Christmas trees, we do all kinds of other things. Alright guys, so we're over here at Nutkin Knoll Tree Farm in Newburgh, Maine. And we're finding a spot to get out of the sun so we can talk a little bit, but we are going to talk to Len Price, who's the proprietor over here, and he is a big part of this needle retention study that we're talking about, and we're going to ask him all kinds of questions so we can get the information out. So let's go get him and we'll go talk to him. All right?
Yeah, well, this is we're in what we call the middle field, set of fields here in the middle of Newburgh. The progeny trees came from 7 clones. They were 2-2 transplants, 2 years in the seed bed, 2 years in the transplant bed. When they were planted here, 2009, so 11 growing seasons here, I guess it would be. And as you can probably tell, they are beyond the 8 foot that we'd like to only work with, but this man is 3 as well. Yeah, all of the progeny trees, which is what the offspring are called from the clones, from the clones in the seed orchard, are separated. They were separated, kept separate by seed from the clone number when the seed was collected. They were then grown out, kept separated by clone number, and when they were planted here, each row is a separate number. So we're standing in number 15, and that's number 43, and that's number 14 row, and so each row is distinct. This was one site of 5 sites around the state where these were planted out, grown up, just like these were. The goal was to evaluate those in the different locations, evaluate for characteristics like bud break, disease resistance, growth rate, one of which is needle retention. And we haven't done a needle retention test on any of these trees yet, and we're looking for the top performers. We're looking for genetics. That's what we're looking for. This lab has established a protocol, and they're very, very familiar with it. They've tested all the fir samples, all the fir varieties rather, that are grown US, Canada, Europe. Had lengthy conversations with the head of the lab there, and he's the guy to do this.
Len, let me ask you this, being a seasoned farmer, both choosing cut and wholesale, why is needle retention so important?
Needles that fall off in mass amounts and in a short period of time are the biggest complaint real tree customers have about having a real tree, and the biggest reason some people have left the real tree world and gone to something else. Really important that we understand this. It's also the characteristic of one of the other, or a characteristic of one of the other fir varieties, especially grown in North Carolina, still kind of in the balsam family, but known as Fraser Fir, and it tends to, as a variety, have longer needle retention, very long needle retention, compared to typical balsams. But there's a lot of genetics at play here. People who know and have studied these things, who think we may have a chance to perform as well as or better than the long needle retaining Fraser Fir. Can we grow in New England? Yes, we can. They take special sites. They take longer to grow. They're harder to grow from a grower's viewpoint. And they don't have some of the characteristics that the balsam, I'll call it the true balsam, New England balsam, have, as far as from a customer viewpoint. Probably twice as much balsamy odor, faster growing, a less expensive tree to produce, easier to work with from a grower standpoint. It can be grown on a much wider variety of ground. So a lot of advantages if we can crack that nut. It really started in the 60s in northern Vermont with a researcher there who ended up coming to Maine and was instrumental in helping the Maine Christmas Tree Association do what it did, because he had done something similar in northern Vermont. There are a couple of growers in the state who have started their own seed orchards as well. Very knowledgeable, very long-term committed farms. Dr. Max McCormick, who was a professor at the University of Maine in the forestry department for many years, he worked with a particular grower in northern Vermont in the 60s and brought that knowledge with him when he came to Maine and was instrumental in getting this all pulled together and kind of riding herd on all this volunteer labor for the association and keeping us heading in the right direction. I think there were 65 or 63 different clones, and we've whittled that down. This is the second progeny. This is like round 2 of progeny testing, and we whittled out the very top performers.
You had mentioned earlier the 43s tend to lag about a year behind in terms of growth rate.
That's been my experience in this growing site. This is I would say this is a premium soils, premium site. It's had Christmas trees on it 40 years. This is number 43. To my eye anyway, these are a little smaller than the adjacent rows of the progeny trees. I've always thought they were a year or two slower getting started and going. They break bud really late.
Why is breaking bud, the timing of the breaking of the buds important?
Yeah, that spring flush out time is some years an important characteristic, some years more than other years. And this year was an example of one, because we had a frost June 3rd here, hard frost. Typically balsam would break bud second week of May in this part of the state, typical year. So with fresh young growth and 26 degrees overnight, you're going to have a lot of damage to the new growth. And so if they haven't broken bud yet, you're not going to get that damage. The other thing is balsam twig aphid times itself to get into the buds at bud break and just after bud break. If you have trees that don't break bud until later, you don't have to worry about balsam twig aphid at all. That's one of the endemic nemesis of balsam fir Christmas tree growers. Although there's another insect which used to be almost not even of any consequence, nobody thought of it, called shoot-boring sawfly, balsam shoot-boring sawfly, which invades late breaking bud fir, especially Fraser, it was thought, especially Fraser, but now we're getting some of it showing up on some of the late breaking balsam. But it's not it's not an annual problem, and it's not a big problem. I've never had to treat for it, you know, but it varies from year to year as well. So yeah, late bud break has quite a few advantages. It also allows me to get out and extends my safe herbiciding window of opportunity if I don't have to worry about herbicide contacting new fresh growth. I get a longer window of time in the spring to do that.
So guys, I'm really glad that you stuck around today to see what we were doing with the needle retention survey. Hopefully we'll get back some results that prove to everybody that Maine Christmas trees are the best Christmas trees in the world. Christmas trees make me happy, and Maine Christmas trees make me happy as well, and I think Len and Ryan probably agree with me. So without further ado, guys, close us out. And what do I always say? I'd rather feel bad in Maine than feel good anywhere else. It's E.B. White.
I'd rather feel good in Maine than feel bad anywhere else.
There you go. No, you don't.
No,
you did it
that
wrong.
was wrong. I'd rather feel bad in Maine than feel good anywhere else.
So there you go, my friends. We'll see you soon.